It was 1996. I was 17 years old, and I was listening to Champagne Supernova, the final song on Oasis's new record. It was and is a kick-ass record. I was also on federal property in Atlanta, Georgia, Chattahoochee National Forest, with a bag of weed in my pocket and a few of my friends. It wasn't long before one of the federal police, one of the green cops, rolled up, searched me, tossed me promptly in the back of his car. Now, needless to say, my parents weren't all too happy with me when I got home, and so a couple days after this incident, they took me to a rehab facility to be evaluated. And I wasn't into it because I was 17 years old, so of course, I had it all figured out, as you can tell. I met with the nice man at the rehab facility, and I wasn't that impressed. He asked me a bunch of questions, and when I was finished, I went outside to have a cigarette while my parents went in to meet with him. While I was outside, a young man, an African-American man, came up to me from South Atlanta. His name was Charles. Maybe you've met him. And if you haven't, hopefully someday you will. He said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And so I regaled him with tales of my impressive drug use and my drug-dealing prowess. And he was all like, "Damn, man, that's some heavy stuff." Then he asked me, "Well, where did you go to school?" Now, I told him, you wouldn't know where I went to school in Atlanta, but let's just say it would be like saying I went to Summit Country Day or some other mostly white, affluent school that hands out opportunity and privilege like it's going out of style, a good school. Charles got angry at me when I told him where I went to school, and he began yelling at me, like really yelling at me. He began asking me a series of questions like, "Have you ever visited your friend in the hospital because he got shot over a drug deal?" Of course I hadn't. The only time I had visited my friend in the hospital is when I was going to see him or her because he or she was visiting his mom or dad who ran the hospital. Charles proceeded to chastise me for not taking advantage of the opportunities so freely given to me in my life. See, my high school had a great reputation, but I spent most of my time hating it there. When my parents came out for meeting with the nice man, I told him it was ready to make a change. So stop me if you've heard this one. America is the greatest country in the world. You have? Good. I know when I was 17, I thought America was a great place. You see, I didn't get any trouble for my indiscretions with the law. No, I was blessed to be born to two excellent parents who worked hard, made some money, and could cover my ass when I got in trouble. And I was prone to getting in trouble. I was also blessed to be born white in America. How about this one? Maybe you've heard this one. I'm proud to be an American. I'm sure you've heard that one, and I'm sure you've seen it on a bumper sticker on the back of everything from a beat-up pickup truck to a brand new Prius. We are all so damn proud to be Americans. I have long held the belief that to properly understand a culture, one needs to study a culture's cliches more intently than it studies its history. Truly, cliches are born out of a culture's history and point to what that culture deems important. As a student of English who studied at this amazing school, I have come to believe that cliches hold all sorts of truth. Our American cliches center on the individual, hard work, dreams, and pride. We tell our children that if they work real hard and follow all the rules, that they can accomplish anything. We tell them that our country has their back and will defend them all over the world from all sorts of scary monsters. We also tell them to buy lots of shit. We tell them that this shit buying will make them happy. We tell them that to buy all the shit, all they have to do is follow all the rules and work real hard. The problem with this mother of all American cliches, that being, if you work real hard, you can buy all the shit, is that it's not true. You can work real hard, you can follow all the rules, and very likely will never be able to buy all the shit. In fact, you may not be able to buy any of the shit, but you'll still want it. So I'll tell you that if you keep following the rules and working real hard, that someday you'll be able to have it. And if you ever get frustrated, don't worry, because America will provide you all kinds of pleasant distractions to keep you distracted and your attention away from the fact that your hard work and rule following didn't amount to much. Our pleasant distractions keep us from being able to make new friends like Charles. You'll never meet Charles if you're distracted all the time. These pleasant distractions that America provides us are important because they're things that most anybody can afford if they do, in fact, work a little bit and follow some of the rules. These things take the form of TV. These things take the form of sports, the internet, pornography. Don't look too long. These things take the form of greasy, crappy food. You know, American things, cheap, crappy things. And they're awesome, right? Who doesn't love these things? I'll be the first to admit that I love White Castle. I'll be the first to admit that I like Scarlett Johansson when she's dressed up like Black Widow in those Avengers movies. I'll be the first to admit that I like Chris Pratt's Guardians of the Galaxy pecs, and I like baseball. I love my American distractions, and I'm aware of my love for them. Now, that doesn't make me better than anybody, not by a long shot. But being aware is step one if we are to be in a position to meet Charles, to make new friends. This awareness is important, and it is not taught to our children when we tell them they live in the greatest country in the world. No, we tend to stop at greatest. Having hobbies, enjoying some greasy cheese fries, going to the baseball game, these things are not bad in and of themselves. No, in fact, they're really healthy, and they keep the most involved of us sane. They keep us fighting. But if we're not careful, they can begin to control us. We begin to find ourselves discussing the most recent Hollywood breakup more often than we find ourselves discussing the fact that our country incarcerates more people than any other country on the planet, or the fact that these people are disproportionately people of color. We find ourselves discussing the fact with our family that Pete Rose should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame more often than we find ourselves discussing the fact that our country's minimum wage is designed to keep the working poor poor. Sure, it matters to me if Pete Rose is in the Baseball Hall of Fame because I like baseball, but it doesn't really matter. We deceive ourselves into thinking our distractions are our values, even if we know they aren't. We make it real easy on those who want to keep all the power and hold all the money to continue to do so. We keep ourselves in the dark. We keep ourselves away from Charles. We do 99% of the work for those who want things to stay the same, for those who want poor kids to stay poor, for those who want their bank accounts to remain untouchable, for those who would prefer my white privilege remain intact. When we get to this point, we forget that our favorite distractions are simply enabling us to take a break, and we start to think they're why we work so hard, why we get up in the morning, so we can pay our internet bill, so we can go to the baseball game. But these favorite distractions are nothing more than taking a break, and this break taking is super important. However, recognizing we're taking a break is even more important. Only then will we become aware that our attention should be elsewhere. Our attention should be on Charles. So how do we become aware if we are surrounded by subtle reminders to deceive and distract ourselves from important social issues? How do we become aware if we will never even recognize the reminders that tell us to remain distracted? How do we become aware of if we are surrounded by even more reminders to forget the act of self-deception that we perform on a daily basis? How will we even know if we met Charles? As Conor Oberst says, you can't break out of a circle that you never knew you were in. To complicate matters even further, even if we become aware of our self-deception, we have self-selected to keep ourselves in the dark, we still have to get over the fact that we still believe America is the greatest country in the world. So step one, I ask myself, what keeps me distracted? Well, that's easy for me to answer. It's music, and it's baseball, and it's greasy, crappy food. Now, step two, to attack the issue of income inequality and rampant discrimination in our country. That's a pretty big leap, right? For myself, very much included. The issue of income inequality and rampant discrimination in our country is far more difficult for us to accept for two reasons. One, if pressing social inequality exists in our community, then obviously we have some role in said inequality because we are a part of the community. If we accept that these inequities are real, then we also accept that we are part of the problem. Two, these inequities are difficult to accept because things have to work out because, you guessed it, we live in the greatest country in the world. So why is it so important to accept the fact that we don't live in the greatest country in the world? Because if America is the greatest, then we have nothing to strive for. Because the greatest anything will always find a way. Why? Because gross inequality cannot exist in a place that is the greatest. It doesn't make any sense. Something cannot be simultaneously great and terrible. Why? Well, because there are rules, dude. And our deeply held belief that America is the greatest country in the world is part and parcel of our country's inability to change. So now we begin to see how our cliches keep us passive. The things we say matter as they define our perception, and perception is reality. That's another cliche. The repetition of the greatest country on the earth mantra makes our belief of it real. And we never even saw it coming or remember when we began believing it. I know I sure as hell don't, and I bet Charles doesn't either. When we truly believe that we live in the greatest country on earth, our activism looks something like this. We confront a social ill. We admit that it exists. We acknowledge that we think it is wrong. We might even post about it on Facebook. And then we kick back and relax and rest easy knowing that somebody will figure it out because we are proud to be Americans. But uncovering our self-deception takes us to another place entirely. It begs us to ask this question: how will these things get figured out? This last piece is difficult to overcome. The first part, identifying our self-selected distractions, is pretty easy. I would bet everybody here could write down 10 things that they really, really liked that helped them stay distracted, just like that. I also bet that most people here can list off a bunch of abhorrent statistics that plague our city and country, like the fact that Cincinnati has the second worst childhood poverty rate in the entire country. That one gets thrown around a lot lately, right? But what are we doing about it? Like, really doing about it? What are you doing about it? What am I doing about it? We as a community need to engage. We need to see, we need to meet people. We have to meet Charles, and if we don't, then the things that we know are wrong simply become things we care about, and that's it. Furthermore, they become things we feel real good about caring about. But that's it. I was talking to my friend Derek, who runs an amazing organization in town, about this very issue a few weeks ago. We spent a lot of our time meeting with good people, attempting to get them to care about the other good people with whom we work. We were lamenting the fact that, to be honest, it's pretty easy for us to get folks to care about what our organizations do. His with minority communities, mine with homeless kids. But moving folks to sustainable action is impossible unless we can find a way to create a situation where people can be in relationship with one another, unless we can create a situation where people can just hang out with Charles. You see, when I was a teacher, I used to tell my high school students that the most effective and radical form of protest was making friends. And I still believe that. However, if we're hyper-focused on our distractions, then we can't be open to making new friends because our attention will be misplaced. If you want to change society, then hang out with people that are different from you. For me, that means having beers with people that aren't politically aligned with me. It means hanging out on street corners in urban Appalachian neighborhoods. It means frequenting the Guatemalan grocery store in Price Hill. It means sitting at round tables with adults with developmental disabilities. You get the idea. But our society is not set up for us to mix and mingle. It is set up to keep us apart. And the pride that is shoved down our throats is designed to keep us ignorant of this fact. My high school in Atlanta was and is a product of a society that is designed to keep different kinds of people separated from intermingling. Many of the schools in this and every city in America are set up this same way. Just walk down the halls of any inner city public school in this country, then walk down the halls of any suburban Catholic school in this country and tell me that our culture promotes friendships between different people. Tell me that our culture wanted me to meet Charles. You won't be able to do that. But this is not the school's fault. No, it's our fault. Charles and I were kept apart from one another, but we did meet for a few minutes. It may have been luck, it may have been providence, depending on your beliefs. I just know that it happened. But when we embrace our distractions, when we embrace people, and when we embrace the issues and we strive to meet Charles, well, then things can begin to change. When we engage with the problems that we know exist, we begin to see these problems are not far away. We begin to see that they won't magically fix themselves. And we begin to see that the greatest country in the world will not fix our most pressing social ills on its own. No, our country needs us to be the greatest. And we can be the greatest. So how do we become the greatest? By getting involved. You, me, him, her, all of us. We all get involved. For until we get involved, our country runs on autopilot. And autopilot is killing us. The first step is admitting we have a problem. There's another cliche for those of you keeping score. Then we identify what keeps us from ignoring the problem and celebrate those things for what they are, distractions. When we do this, we take away their power. We make our favorite hobbies ours. We take the power back. Then we find our own special way to combat the problem, and noting that making friends throughout this process is combating the problem. Not only may we make a tiny difference in our corner of the world if we open ourselves up to other people, but we'll bring others along with us. We'll keep ourselves out of the dark, and we'll see that we're moving America closer to actually being the greatest. America is us, and without us, America is far from being the greatest anything in the world. Without us, America becomes a hollow idea. With us, America can achieve amazing things. And when all's said and done, we can celebrate our good work with a beer and a greasy cheeseburger at the baseball game with our new friends. We can even take Charles with us. I never saw Charles again after that day in 1996. We never got to become friends, but without him, I wouldn't have made all the friends I did. I would never have opened a coffee shop in 2008, 12 years after I met Charles, with my brother Mike Rogers, who, when we met, was homeless. Mike grew up on the streets of Cincinnati. I grew up on a golf course in the suburbs. But you know how much difference that made in the end? Not much at all. Charles took me out of my comfort zone, and I never went back in. I enjoy the uncertainty of being open to other people. I enjoy seeing and understanding that other people's American experiences aren't the same as mine. And finally, I enjoy working real hard and following some of the rules. Not so I can have all the shit, but so that we can work toward a day when everyone has what they need and maybe has a little bit left over for those things that they do like, for their distractions. If Charles were here today, I'd tell him thanks. Thanks for making me aware of my distractions. Thanks for making me realize I'm blessed beyond belief. And thanks for pushing me to action on behalf of others. I would tell him thanks for opening me up to the experience of others. When I was 17, I had a chip on my shoulder. Now, 20 years later, I'm 37, and I still have a chip on my shoulder. The difference is that I think I know what the chip is from now, and I think I have an idea of how to get rid of it. In Champagne Supernova, Oasis asks us, how many special people change? I would respond, all of them. At least all of them can, because we all have time to open ourselves up. We're all special. We all have time to meet Charles and make some new friends. So when you see Charles, tell him I said, hey, I look forward to seeing you down the road as we all embrace change and friendship together, as we all work to make America the greatest country in the world.